this segment, this is just like a little, it's kind of like a game we like to play in fantasy football. We just kind of go over some players, and this kind of like expresses our sentiment towards these players. Who would you rather have for your fantasy team? So being the theme of the last show we did, where we talked a lot about Zay Flowers, one of the comparisons we did was Zay Flowers and Malik Nabers. And I think all of us agreed that we would rather have Zay Flowers, but I think that sentiment kind of changes a little bit today. So why don't we just start it off, and we can each give like little reasonings on who we would rather have. Let's start it off with Malik Nabers or Zay Flowers. Who would you rather have?
Hunter, do you mind if I take this real quick? Just to
Jeez,
touch on
just a
neighbors,
Giants fan. Go
and
for it.
then
Yeah.
awesome. I'll let you follow this up. My answer has changed. Last week we were saying that, or I think I said it. If Malik Nabers had a different quarterback, and I think Hunter said this earlier
Oh,
too.
I did.
Yeah, I would be picking Zay Flowers. Well, maybe that's true, but in fantasy, I'm changing my answer. I'm going Malik Nabers, and I have Zay Flowers in my league, but Malik Nabers has looked amazing. He has he's been unbelievable this year. He has 23 receptions, 37 targets, 271 yards, and he has 3 touchdowns. 6 of his catches are 20 plus yards. An elite route runner. He's fast. He's got great hands. He goes up for some of these catches. He had 2 touchdowns this past week, and I mean, both of them were like acrobatic plays, like the one-handed grab and then like a spinning catch on the sideline, a toe tap to get in. Like I watched this entire game, obviously my team, so um he made me want to like on the spot purchase a Malik Neighbors jersey. I got Brian Burns because I don't like getting the first round pick because I took Odell and then I'd Saquon, but maybe if Neighbors is a Giant for life, I'll get his jersey. But oh my God, he looks unbelievable. Like I said earlier in the podcast when I was talking about the Giants, he might be the best rookie receiver. I think him and Jaden Daniels and Marvin Harrison, don't get me wrong. I want to put it on the record. I think Marvin Harrison is really good, but fantasy wise, I think Jaden Daniels and Malik Nabers have been the most impressive rookies. And I still think Zay Flowers is good. I still think he's one of the most, consistent receivers, a really good flex. If you have him at flex or a low end wide receiver too, he's my flex. I think he had a bad week. He'll bounce back. Don't get me wrong. I really like Zay Flowers, but my answer has changed. I am going with Malik Neighbors. Hunter, if you want to follow that up.
Yeah, I mean, just imagine if Jane Daniels and Malik Neighbors were teammates at one point. Isn't that crazy, right?
Yeah, that would be crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
Just
They,
imagine.
they did pretty well at LSU.
Throw
They won.
Brian Thomas in there too. Why not?
Yeah, let's start Brian Thomas. Sure, sure. Yeah. But yeah, I can't really add much more. I mean, Adam pretty much hit all the targets I was gonna say. I do think I would rather Malik Neighbors than Zay Flowers. He's clearly been transitioning very well from LSU to the NFL to the Giants. Um, I I will say I'm definitely a little surprised with how good he's been. He's I don't know if I'm ready to say that he's better than Marvin Harrison Jr. yet. Obviously, the stats show that he is, but it's only 3 games, and that's not to knock him or anything. You're still a top two wide receiver in your class. I mean, you're drafted a top two wide receiver in your class as well. But yeah, I've been really impressed with what he's done so far on a team that is just pretty much in the dumps overall, and he's really been a bright spot for him, and he's pretty much the main reason why they won on Sunday. And I don't know if Zay Flowers is really, if they were to swap teams, I think it's the best way to put it. If they were to swap teams, I really don't think Zay Flowers would have made that big of a difference with the Giants. And obviously, if Malik Nabers play with Lamar Jackson, we'd be going crazy already. So,
Yeah, I
but
think the standings would reflect a little differently.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so yeah, there's my reason.
Yeah, 100% agree. I just want to, before Mark goes on to the next one, I just want to clear up the Marvin Harrison thing. I think Marvin Harrison might be better long term, like the overall player, but I'm saying like right now the
Of course.
most impressed, and I think Caleb too will be a very good rookie. It's just right now through 3 weeks, the most impressive. If I had to choose two, it's very close, but I'm taking Neighbors over Marvin, and I'm taking Jaden Daniels. So, but
Mhm.
yeah, we'll move on.
Yeah, I'll just touch on that quickly. I mean, I really thought that Daniel Jones was going to cap the ceiling for Malik Nabers, and it kind of seems to be the other way around. It seems like Malik Nabers is elevating the ceiling for Daniel Jones. But I mean, right now, yeah, Malik Nabers over Zay Flowers because I think the trend of the Ravens is not so exciting. If they continue to just be that run first team, then it's not looking very good for Zay Flowers because I was excited about him because he had 10 targets in week 1 and then 11 in week 2. So like he was like clearly like the number one guy, and I thought the passing volume was going to be there. I do think the passing volume is going to go up with the Ravens though. I don't think they're going to continue to like they will be a run first team, but I don't think it's going to be as drastic as it was against the Cowboys every single time. So, but yeah, let's move on from that. I kind of want to go towards the top of wide receiver rankings here. Um, I think the wide receiver one rest of season is kind of up in the air for debate right now. I mean, who do you guys think is the wide receiver one going into the rest of the season? I mean, CeeDee Lamb, going into this year was the wide receiver one, but he hasn't necessarily been the wide receiver one as of late. Um, It could be Amon-Ra St. Brown. It could be Justin Jefferson. It could be Jamar Chase. Um, what do you guys think? Who's the number one guy as the wide receiver going forward rest of season?
I mean, I got my answer. Hunter, if you want to
Go
go,
for it.
or I can.
I'm still thinking it over, but I have a few
I
names.
can take this because I mean, I'm a little bit biased because Mark's gonna like my answer. I'm a little bit biased because I have him in fantasy, but I have Justin Jefferson, and I think he was very slept on this year. I know he's coming off an injury. I know he has a new quarterback, but he's the best receiver in the game. I'm sorry. That's just plain and simple. Tyreek Hill is very good. Don't get me wrong. CeeDee Lamb is very good. Amon-Ra is very good. But right now, the best receiver in the game, and that was why like I said, I had the seventh pick in my main league and came down to Jamar and Jefferson. And I took the chance on Jefferson. I'm glad I did. Don't get me wrong. Jamar had a great week, and I think he's going to start improving and turning the page. But I'm also looking at who's the better team. Now, I didn't think the Vikings would be 3-0. I'm sorry, Mark. But I also didn't think the Bengals would be 0-3. But Sam Darnold has looked incredible. And if he can stay healthy and keep this up, I mean, I'm not a Jets fan by any means, but I think I said this in a few episodes again, but I'm going to say it again. There should be a most improved award
I
because right
agree.
now there's comeback player, but Sam Darnold's not really coming back from any, like, you can't say he's coming back from being bad. Like you'd give that to a person who's coming back from a severe injury. Like if McCaffrey were to, come back and then win MVP or something, like, sure, Joe Flacco, it's kind of a bad one because he's kind of coming back from kind of rejuvenating his career, but people wanted to give it to DeMar Hamlin, but I think like the NBA does the most improved player. My most improved player is Sam Darnold. And he just like everybody was worried going into the year, Jefferson doesn't have Kirk Cousins anymore, but Sam Darnold looks great. And he's still throwing it up there, and Jefferson is going. I think you could put any quarterback, like Hunter just used the comparison. If you put Zay Flowers on the Giants and Nabers on the Ravens, like what would happen? I think you put Jefferson on any team, and he makes that team just so much better. So my number one receiver right now is Justin Jefferson. I think they right now look like a fringe playoff team, the Vikings. I think if you have him as your wide receiver one in fantasy, congratulations. Um, he's going to get you, 20 points a week. He's going to have at least a touchdown, maybe a 50 plus yard catch in the process of it too. Like it's hard to go against him. And I think the reason he was slept on so much this year was because he's coming off the injury and because the team didn't have a great season last year. They have a new quarterback this year. But when healthy, this guy's the best receiver in the league. It's plain and simple. And if he can stay healthy and Darnold can stay healthy, then I think he is the best receiver in the league. And I'm glad I got him at 7. It's a steal for me. So
Yeah. Um, it's tough to really pinpoint one guy. Um, I do have Tyreek Hill in my league. But with the QB injuries, because now
Injuries.
Skylar Thompson got hurt, now they're down to like Tim Boyle, and hopefully
they got to sign Tannehill, man. They really need to sign Tannehill.
Nah, I think they're probably just gonna elevate Tyler Huntley from the practice squad, and maybe he'll start on Sunday. But
Side note, but he goes by Snoop now.
yeah, it's Tyler Snoop Huntley. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't really know how to work out the whole Tyreek Hill Dolphins QB situation in terms of ranking him as a receiver. I want to rank him as number one because I really think he is, but a wide receiver can sometimes only be as good as their QB, and if the QB can't get him the ball, then obviously he's not going to get any stats. So it pains me to say that I don't think Tyreek Hill is the number one receiver. If I really had to pick one guy right now, I might go with Jefferson. For most of the reasons Adam said. A friend of mine a few months ago asked me for Dynasty, should I get for Dynasty, remember? All right, should I get Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson? And we're both like, oh, well, I mean, Jefferson is a slightly better receiver, but Chase has a better QB and a better situation around him. But now, I mean, I'm not saying by any means that Darnold is better than Burrow, but
Right now he is.
yeah, right at this stage of the
At
season,
week
yes.
3, yeah, he
But
is.
in general, I
Yeah.
can't say that Sam Darnold. But
True.
I am really impressed with how Sam Darnold has been, and I think that is kind of making Justin Jefferson the wide receiver one in fantasy. I would put Amon-Ra St. Brown in that conversation. He struggled. I wouldn't say struggled in week one, but he wasn't looked at as often. But week two, he dominated. In week three, he played really well. So I think he's right back on track. I mentioned Jamar just now. I still think he's definitely in the conversation. I'm gonna take CD maybe slightly out of it, which is a bit of a hot take. I think Dak's a good QB, not an amazing one. I think he's a good QB, but I just think with all the drama that's going on in Dallas, including with him, CD. I mean, look how long it took for him to get a deal. Um, I don't think that he'll be the wide receiver one for this season. I think he's still a wide receiver one without a doubt. He's a top 10 receiver in fantasy football. No one could ever argue against that. But in short, I'd probably say Jefferson is the one, and Chase and St. Brown are up there too. And until Tyreek Hill gets QB, maybe he's in there somewhere.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just want to add one more thing too. Sorry. I just remembered with Jefferson making him the highest paid receiver, and I know Jamar Chase wants to be highest paid by a penny, which is still ridiculous to me because he wants to reset the market. Don't get me wrong, I think Jamar Chase is good, but making Jefferson, as we're talking right now, September 24th, week 3 going into week 4, making him the highest paid receiver this offseason, him breaking the bank was unbelievable for him because I think he recovering from the injury, Sam Darnold looking as good as he's looked, and that new contract, for me, again, it's a no-brainer. He's number one. So
All right. Good answers. Justin Jefferson, wide receiver one, rest of season from both Adam and Hunter here. Let's stick with the wide receivers here. I'm gonna go with two guys here that I believe are like neck and neck, but I just kind of want to see who gets the splitting of hairs here in fantasy football. Um, who would you rather have on your fantasy team rest of season, considering both of the offensive situations that are going on with both of these teams? And I just kind of want like a quick answer just to see like what the sentiment is. Nico Collins or Rashee Rice?
Good
Because
question.
for me, Nico Collins and both Rashee Rice are top 10 and borderline top 5 right now.
Yeah, I can take this first, I guess.
go ahead.
It's a good question. I would probably go. So the way I'm looking at it, and it's how I've always looked at it, is the QB situation. Now, fantasy wise, Stroud and Mahomes have not been it so far, which is a real bummer because I have Stroud on my team and I keep starting him over Jaden Daniels, but that's besides the point. Um, so I think I'm gonna go with Rashee Rice because for a variety of reasons. I think one, I think he's just a bit more talented overall. He's also younger. But I guess the main thing to take away is the targets around him. Obviously Kelsey's a big target, although it hasn't proven yet this season, but there really isn't anyone else that really comes to mind as someone that could take away a lot of targets from him. Meanwhile, the Texans have, let's see, Joe
Diggs.
Mixon, when he's healthy, could catch out of the backfield. Then you got Tank Dell and you got Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs is a multi-time Pro Bowler, and Tank Dell was an outstanding rookie last year before he got hurt. And yeah, so that's way too much talent to go around there. Obviously, I think Nico's still going to play great the rest of the season, but based on the targets around him, I got to go with Rashee Rice here.
Yeah, a lot of the same reasons for me. I'm going Rashee Rice. Mainly for what Hunter said about the targets around him. I just feel like there's less competition. You kind of talked about it, so I don't want to go into it, but Hollywood Brown might be out for the year. Xavier Worthy looks great, but he's not quite at the level of Rashee Rice yet.
Yeah.
Kelsey hasn't really done anything this season yet. I think that will change. But another thing I do want to mention before moving on is Patrick Mahomes is just an all-around. I know it's early, but he always kind of does this where he takes time to get into the season. I mean, he's still 3-0. Like, it's Patrick Mahomes. I mean, he's throwing him the ball as opposed to CJ Stroud. And I'm not saying CJ Stroud is bad, but he is very young still. And going up against the potentially second best quarterback of all time, I'm still taking Patrick Mahomes, who has 3 championships and might get a 4th in 3 years, 4 and whatever, 5 years. Like, he's the number 1 target on his team. He's got one of the best quarterbacks throwing him the ball. It's kind of hard to pick against Rashee Rice. Like, I think Hunter said, he's younger, he's more talented. Nico Collins I really like, and I know Rashee Rice was a rookie last year and broke out, but Nico Collins has been in the league for a little bit longer, didn't really break out until last year. And like Hunter said, he's got competition on his team with Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, Dalton Schultz. Very talented offense. I think if the argument were who has the better offense with players around them, I think I might say Texans, but who will have the bigger impact? I'm going Rashee Rice.
Awesome. All right. This next question isn't really going to be a this or that. This is more so just like assuming we're in a 10-team league and, the first 10 wide receivers are all wide receiver ones in fantasy. How close would you guys say Drake London is to being a wide receiver one? Because I believe that, with the way, listen, I am a Drake London fan. I think he's a very talented player. Just he's a very similar talent profile to a guy like Nico Collins. Just want to say that. And I think everyone can agree on that. Both like same size, same height. Like it's very similar when you look at them. Now, obviously, Nico Collins has been better so far, but with the way that the Falcons offense is trending upward and how, Kirk Cousins is starting to like really look good on this team, considering that trend continues, like, do you guys think that Drake London could push into wide receiver one territory? Like potentially, I would say with guys like Marvin Harrison, Garrett Wilson, and Malik Nabers. Like, is that really that far out of the question?
So it's not that far out of the question. But I haven't seen, I don't know why it gets rated so high every season and it just doesn't work out. I mean, obviously he's off to a solid start so far. Not an amazing one, not a wide receiver one by any means, but I think he's definitely on track to improve as the season goes on. But if I were to put him as a wide receiver one, it would be at the very lowest tier of it.
Okay. Yeah, fair
But
enough.
the very highest is the wide receiver two. I will say that.
Okay.
So short and simple. Yeah.
Because right now, when I look at rankings,
What's
Drake London is like just on the cusp. He's ranked 13 out
Okay,
of
so
all wide
yeah,
receivers. Like he's on the cusp
very
of
high end
potentially, yeah, he's on the cusp of pushing wide receiver one territory.
So right
that's
outside
why I
that
asked.
top 10, like you were saying, right? Like
Yeah,
you're
if
saying
if I'm looking at a 10-team league, because that's
Yeah.
like on average what leagues tend to be.
Can you just name me 8 through 15 on that site?
Okay, so I'm looking at flockfantasy.com. Number 8 is AJ Brown,
Yep.
then Marvin Harrison, then Garrett Wilson. Malik Nabers is on that wide receiver one cusp territory as well. Then Brandon Ayuk, then Drake London. 14, we have Chris Olave, and then 15 is Mike Evans.
Yeah, I think he's in that area. That's fine.
Okay.
I think it's a fair rating. Yeah, I'm gonna keep it short, similar to Hunter. I'm Mark, you're not gonna like this. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Drake London by any means. I think he's off to a good start, but I don't think he's been a wide receiver one yet. If we're talking about in fantasy, he's obviously the wide receiver one on the Falcons, but
No, he's
I think
never. Yeah, I
yeah,
can see that he's never been a wide receiver one in fantasy. He's actually
yeah,
like he's never really been a high end wide receiver two.
yeah. Well,
Like he's maybe been a wide receiver three,
he
considering
was
like
my wide
various.
receiver too last year. I mean, my wide receiver core last year, I did terrible. I had a lot of injuries. I actually just missed the playoffs last year, my main league. But I had AJ Brown as my wide receiver one. Drake London was my wide receiver two. My wide receiver three flex was Christian Kirk. That
I
ended
only
up
bring up
working,
the
but
question
yeah,
because now he's got Kirk Cousins and Kirk
yeah,
Cousins is starting to like
yeah.
play good.
Yeah, I think that makes him better. I think what Hunter said is accurate. Having him at 13 right outside that top 10 is fair. Now, I don't think you're completely crazy for thinking he could eventually be a wide receiver one in fantasy, but I just haven't seen it yet. I hope I do see it. Don't get me wrong. I hope he proves me wrong, but I'm not yet ready to. If the question was him or Nico Collins, then I think I'm going Nico
Oh,
still.
I'm taking Nico right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I don't. If the question is he wide receiver one? I think he's on that track, but he's not there yet. I'll just
Yeah,
keep it short.
he's for me, he's on the track because like
Mhm.
week one is just we can put that behind us because that was
Yeah,
just like a bad
tough
game.
defense. Like I said, Pittsburgh's defense
Yeah,
is tough.
both week
Yeah,
two and week three, 17, 18. Now I know like he got points very late and very early, but I think this is just the start of the Falcons offense kind of clicking and finding the rhythm.
well, I actually
And
think he was.
especially,
I think he was more impressive in the Eagles game than he was. I mean, I know he was impressive this week, but that touchdown at the end of the Eagles game to win it, to me, that was like his best game out of the three thus far. That's at least
okay.
my argument. I don't know. I mean, he had a good. Don't get me wrong, he had a good week this week, but that touchdown, like if he didn't have that touchdown at the end, the Falcons don't win that game, and they're sitting here 0-3.
So yeah,
Then
I
I
think
don't,
he's giving like floor play right now,
right? I agree.
or maybe slightly above his floor, which is a wide receiver two range. So
Yeah, I
high
agree.
end. Okay. All right. The Drake London sentiment is there.
Mhm.
Um, why don't we pivot over to a guy like Chris Godwin? Because for me, man, he's been succeeding playing in the slot like a lot, I think. He had a great game one in fantasy. Now Mike Evans was, the star of the show in week one, but week two, week three, I mean, it's been the Chris Godwin show.
He looks good.
Um, when I look at him, I mean, like he's ranked like on Flock Fantasy, like he's ranked behind guys like Devontae Adams, Devonta Smith, Mike Evans, Chris Olave. I mean, like Chris Olave did have the good performance, but I mean, like it's never really been sustained in fantasy. I know it's only been 3 weeks with Chris Godwin, but like, I mean, like, does he push into like top 15 territory, Chris Godwin? Like, is he up there for you guys rest of season, or do you think
Nah,
the rank at 18 is accurate?
I think that's pretty fair. I've never been huge on Chris Godwin, so maybe it's a little biased, but as long as I mean Baker had a bad game, the whole Bucks offense did, but I don't know why they haven't really used Evans the last couple weeks. I know that's going to change because he's a first ballot Hall of Famer that has had 1,000 yards every single season that he's played. I think he's the only one to ever really do that. Um, so I think they'll definitely start going to him a little bit more. Not necessarily that they'll be going to Godwin significantly less, but I wouldn't. I would say that like Godwin's like a flex option for the rest of the season. Maybe like I'd say like a mid to low end wide receiver too, but definitely a really good flex.
Yeah, if the question is he a wide receiver one? The answer is no. But the question is if he's a
No,
top
yeah.
15 receiver, you could. It's really close for me. I mean, you might be able to argue that. And the only reason being is I think I really like Tampa. I know this week was bad for them, but if Baker can stay healthy and if Baker can play the way he played at the end of the season last year and share the ball. I mean, Bucky Irving looks great. Rashad White can start looking good too. I don't think that's a really good running back duo compared to the Lions. I mean, I think it's definitely one of the better running backs or backfields, I guess. But in the passing game, I mean, I agree with Hunter's point that Mike Evans is a future Hall of Famer, potentially first ballot. I mean, he's unbelievable. He's definitely better than Chris Godwin, but maybe he's like 15, maybe he just misses that top 15. But I'm not completely ruling Chris Godwin out. I think he's a really good option for you. But again, if he's your wide receiver 1, then I think you have some issues. I think he's a solid wide receiver 2, a really good flex. But I don't top 15. He might be like 16 or 17. Where did they have him on that site?
18.
I think that's fair. I think he
Okay.
just misses it, but you could argue 15. Like Olave had 2 really bad weeks. Like maybe, depending on what the Saints do the rest of the year. I know they played well this week. They lost, but he had a good game finally. You might flip flop those two. But I'm not ready to just kind of like brush Godwin away and say, all right, obviously Mike Evans is better. He's not the number 1 receiver on his team, but I think it's kind of similar to Ayuk and Debo, but not to that extreme. Ayuk is definitely a wide receiver 1. Godwin is not a wide receiver 1. So.
All right, why don't we stick with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because I think there's a lot to be said about this offense. How much do you guys think, you know, considering Rashad White's historical data of being just extremely inefficient with the run game, he's always been good in the receiving game, but like in the run game, like this is a guy we're talking about that barely gets above 3 yards per carry. Maybe he like hovers in like the 2 yards per carry range. And then you got Bucky Irving who comes out and is like just on all metrics just way more efficient than Rashad White. I mean, like Rashad White was drafted as like a high end like running back option in fantasy this year, but I mean, like it's starting to look like that Bucky Irving is, kind of eating into that workload. Now, I'm not saying I'd rather have Bucky Irving over Rashad White, but I mean, like, do you think that Rashad White like can fall down in the rankings drastically if, you know, Bucky Irving really starts to get more of the backfield, which that has been the trend as of late?
Yeah, I think I don't know if I'm ready to say he's completely better. I agree with you. I don't think he's better than Rashad White, but I think with the way things have gone this year so far, I think it's okay to say that he will and could eventually take over that RB1 job. I think it's a little similar to how things are going in Cincinnati. I know Zach Moss has been better, but I'm not ready to just say Chase Brown is like not going to be this emerging running back. And you have to remember, running backs get hurt. Like if Rashad White takes over most of the snaps or most of the carries, you got Bucky Irvin coming in, right, taking over, and he could eventually be the RB1 for the rest of the season, even if, Rashad White were to get hurt and then come back. And same goes for Cincinnati. If Zach Moss gets hurt and Chase Brown takes over and then Moss comes back, Chase Brown's still the RB1 because of how he played. I think it's really close, but I'm definitely more confident in. I don't really know how to answer the question, but I think I'm a little bit more confident in Bucky Irving right now. I'm a little bit biased because I have him in Dynasty, and I'm happy about it because he's so young. He's a rookie, and he's giving me so much to like about him. He's a keeper that I'm keeping him on my team. If I end up rebuilding, like he's going to be a big part of that. But as for the Bucks, I mean, I think it's more of a. I think they're going to be passing first more. I think you're going to be looking for Mike Evans, Chris Godwin more, but I think you're not crazy to say Bucky Irving has been better. He's not all overall or all around a better running back than Rashad White, but this year I think you could make the argument he has been and will be the better running back of the two.
Okay.
Yeah. I was never super high on Rashad White for the last couple of years. Obviously, he's great at receiving, but for lack of a better term, terrible at running. I mean, less than 3 yards per carry or so is not cutting it. I watched Bucky Irving when he was at Oregon. Super talented guy. I thought he was plays very similar to Rachaad White actually before the draft process. So I thought it was interesting that they picked him up. I think it's clear that Bucky's definitely emerging as potential lead back there overall. So I do fear for Rachaad White owners. Pretty much everything else Adam said, I would pretty much agree on without just repeating it. But yeah, I would take Bucky Irving over Rachaad White for the rest of the season. Now, do I think that they could do a David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs kind of thing where both of them could start in lineups? Absolutely not. I don't even know if one of them can. I think
I mean, they
the
could. I
best.
don't think it would work as good. Like,
No, yeah,
I mean,
like you
they
can
could
do it.
try. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
you can do like
that's
an
what I'm saying.
RB2
Like,
flex,
yeah,
but I think they're both like RB2 flex level, and I just don't think that would work out in a fantasy league.
agreed.
All right. Why don't we stick with the running backs here? I really think the RB like one rest of season is really in between three guys. It's not going to be in between five, it's in between three. On just a quick whim, you know, who would you guys say like is RB1 rest of season going forward? Bijan, Saquon, or Brees Hall?
I have my answer. I mean,
I have
I
mine. I have mine as well.
want to say at the same time, just say the first name at the same time. Ready?
Okay.
One, two, God damn it. Yeah. All right. Saquon.
Saquon. Yeah.
I really don't want to
Yeah.
jinx myself because I have him in fantasy. I was
And he
so
tends to get
so
hurt.
high on him in fantasy. Um, like going into the season, and I've been getting trade offers for him nonstop. Um, my whole logic being so high on him going into the season is that he's going from being a top 10 running back on the worst offensive line of the decade versus going to a team with a top 5 offensive line of the decade. Not just like the last couple of years, like for 5, 10 years. I mean, the Eagles went from 4 Pro Bowlers on their offensive line to 3 after Jason Kelsey retired, as it's now Mailata, Alabama's Landon Dickerson, and
Lane Johnson.
Lane Johnson. Yeah, yeah. Who's like the best one of all of them, obviously.
Yeah.
Why I didn't think of him for a sec. But obviously it's panning out for him so far. Um I really don't think it's a question. I really hope I don't jinx myself either. That I think that he is the RB1 and will be for the rest of the season. So I'm knocking on wood wherever I could find it around me, but I can't. Yeah, yeah. You got a desk. I see
I
you're
got a
on.
desk. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I know exactly where you are. Even though you got the Giants
The
back there.
Giants background doesn't phase where I am right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it pains me to say it. Saquon's the best running back right now, and he will be the rest of the season. The only thing, and Hunter, I agree with everything Hunter said, but he didn't say this. Injuries have been concerned for him. Obviously, and I think he did kind of say it. The offensive line didn't protect for him, didn't block for him, so that could be a factor as to why he got hurt so much. Also, the MetLife turf is terrible. But it is.
Oh yeah,
But
you're right.
Philly's O line is way better. Question I'm thinking about, and I thought about this the other day, is if Saquon were on this year's Giants team, again, I don't know. Their offensive line isn't tremendously better, but it is improved. Don't get me wrong. Like their offensive line is much better this year than it was the last 5 years. I think you can say that. I think that's a safe thing to say. So I'd be interested to see how he would look with the Giants this year. But he's not. He's on the Eagles, who have, like Hunter said, a top 5 O line. So yeah, he's the best. Pains me to say it. I can't really say much else, but the only thing I'm watching and the reason he was my running back last year in fantasy, I kind of hated that though, because I hate drafting like guys on my favorite team, which is part of the reason I didn't get Malik Nabers, but maybe I'll get him next year. But yeah, and he got hurt last year too, which again, reason for my struggles last year in fantasy. If he can stay healthy, he's easily the best running back. But actually, this is a good opportunity to plug what Marc said last week. I posted a YouTube short on this. Like Jalen Hurts has been a better rusher than a better receiver. So I think we're kind of looking at a similar thing like the Ravens, where Lamar Jackson is a great rushing quarterback, and he's not as good as a passer because I don't think Jalen Hurts is that good of a passer. Bold take, but I think so. He's better rushing quarterback. Not that bold. Yeah, I mean, better. I mean, he's got better weapons in Philly than Lamar has in Baltimore, but better rushing quarterback in my opinion. And he's got a good running back. Now they finally have Saquon. They have Derrick Henry. I think you can make the argument it's kind of similar, but there's not really much else I can say. Saquon has just had the better start. He's got a true offensive line now. They're on a contending team. And if I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but if he can stay healthy, he'll be the best. And he is the best. Even with the Giants, he was the best or one of the best running backs. But problem is he couldn't stay healthy. So injuries are the main concern. But if he stays healthy, he's the best running back.
Okay.
Pains me to say.
Really, really, I guess it's not that interesting. I mean, I feel like with any of those guys, you can go Bijan, Saquon, Brees, or Brees, Saquon, Bijan, or Saquon, Brees. Like I don't know. I guess Saquon has had the way better performances over both Brees and Bijan, but Brees and Bijan, they're also just extremely talented in themselves, and their schedule will get easier as the season goes on. So, yeah. I just want to pivot over to not running back, quarterback real quick before we end the segment because I've had a lot of Jalen Hurts talk as of recently, and to me, he's just kind of, if you've guys seen the short on the channel, you guys will understand how my sentiment is towards Jalen Hurts. But to
I
me,
agree.
he's just been an extreme like wild card. Now, I don't think it's as extreme as guys like Anthony Richardson, but like I don't know, like when I watch Jalen Hurts play, it looks like when nothing is able to be like done in the passing game, he just kind of like it's almost like he tries to force it, and every time he does that, it's like an interception every single time. Now, with quarterback rankings in fantasy, generally speaking, for the past few years, it's been Josh Allen at one, which is not debatable. Jalen Hurts at two, and then Lamar Jackson at three, which has been like the trend. Um, for me, I'm just gonna say it quickly. I'm gonna take Lamar Jackson over Jalen Hurts right now. But what do you guys think? Who would you rather have, rest of season going forward?
Um, Turnovers have been a massive issue for Jalen Hurts. I think I heard from commentary that on his interception this past Sunday, it marked, and going back to last season, 7 straight games where he's thrown a pick. That's a big issue. And that's really the main reason why I would put Lamar over him. Besides that, I'd probably stick with Hurts just because Hurts has better options and he gets those tush pushes for touchdowns. But right now the turnovers are killing his stock. Simple as that.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Lamar. Jalen Hurts for the turnovers. He has 4 interceptions this year. He's been sacked 7 times. The 4 interceptions, he's tied for second most. Will Levis has 5. Don't get me wrong. I think the Eagles have the better all-around offense and might be the better all-around team. But I just feel like Lamar has more. You see, with quarterbacks, and we've kind of talked about this in fantasy, you want somebody, and this is what makes Josh Allen so good. He can do it all. He can run. He uses his legs. He can throw downfield. He can scramble out of the pocket. He's got a pretty good O-line. Like he's on a good team, and I feel like those multi-dimensional players are the ones that end up succeeding more. And for me, I'm not saying Jalen Hurts is not a great quarterback. I mean, I'd still put him top 3. I'd rather have Lamar than Hurts because I think, and I said this before, and Hunter agreed, he's not really much of a bold take, but Lamar is a better passer than Jalen Hurts. And the position quarterback historically, and again, we're kind of seeing this new wave of quarterbacks or running backs, and that's what's made Jaden Daniels look so good through the first 3 weeks. But a quarterback who can throw downfield, doesn't matter who your weapons are, who gets you touchdowns and goes down the field and scores on almost every drive. And I know Lamar's had a tough start to the season, but I mean, we're talking about an MVP. Like, you want to talk about guys who will eventually be in the Hall of Fame. I think Jalen Hurts might be in the Hall of Fame, but I think Lamar will definitely be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, he needs a ring definitely to help him out, and same goes for Josh Allen. But Lamar's just, I think, had the better career. And I know it's tough because Jalen Hurts has been to a Super Bowl, but has better weapons, might be on a better offense, but Lamar can just do it he can do it all. Now, obviously, he rushes first. He's a running first quarterback, and same goes with Jalen Hurts. But the whole interceptions, Lamar's I'm looking right now. He has one interception on the year and his 3 sacks. Jalen Hurts has 7 sacks, or has been sacked 7 times. Like, for somebody who's supposed to have one of the best O-lines, 7 sacks, like, that's not very good through the first 3 weeks. And I know, like, Jaden Daniels has been, sacked 9 times, and Baker's been sacked 13 times, and there are quarterbacks who've been sacked a lot, but the Eagles are supposed to have a better offensive line, and it just seems like Lamar's been the better quarterback, even though the records don't show it thus far. So I have to go Lamar. It's very close, but maybe I'm biased too because I'm a Giants fan. I don't like Jalen Hurts, but I had him last year in fantasy. I don't hate him. He's had a successful career, but I do like Lamar, and I feel like he is having individually statistically, he's having the better year. And once the Ravens start figuring it out, he will be fine. And I think, like, Hunter picked them to go. What, right? Didn't he pick them to win the Super Bowl? Like,
I did.
Exactly. I got to go Lamar.
All right. That wraps it up for me on this segment of who would you rather have, and kind of expressing sentiment towards who we believe is the better player and better fantasy options.